Hey everybody, Argent here with a reactionary review of Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. Now this is going to be on the book, not the TV show. I used an image from the TV show just because I thought it was fitting. I haven't actually watched the TV show and I don't really have a desire to. I do have a lot to say about the book though. So this was back from, I don't know what you'd call it, the golden age of science fiction. Which I don't like most of the stuff from the golden age of science fiction. This is when science fiction was a lot more hard. That is, it was very focused on technical details, et cetera, et cetera. A very common theme during this period, which is still common today, but was almost completely dominant, was the idea of what will first contact look like. How will it change humanity's perspective once we kind of contact aliens? And generally speaking, the consensus seemed to be nation states would disappear, race would disappear, religion would disappear, culture would disappear, everything would just fall away, and humanity would become united under a liberal democratic regime that basically meeting aliens would result in the end of history. And Childhood's End is an example of this. There's some other examples. Rendezvous with Rama is kind of similar. Star Trek's probably the most notable example. But generally speaking, that was kind of the view that once we met aliens, once we went into space, then the natural state would be the end of War in Nations. Which is kind of interesting in Mass Effect because Earth was never united. Various nations sponsor colonies, and the Alliance's only purpose is to do foreign relations and have a human military so it can compete against other great powers. So there's this period. This was also a period when pretty much, for those of you who aren't aware of the end of history was a theory come up with by Francis Fukuyama, which is the idea that eventually all the world would become Sweden and there would be no more war. That basically it's kind of if you know what Whig history is, it's basically the idea that everything is moving towards social liberalism, and eventually everything will become this liberal post-historical society. And once it's perfected, there will be no more change. The Hegelian dialect will have come to an end. Sorry for throwing out so many ideas there without explaining any of them, but let's get into the plot. So Childhood's End, as you may have guessed, refers to the end of kind of humanity on Earth. I would assume it's a reference to, I can't remember his name, the father of rocketry, who was a Russian scientist, who said that the Earth is a cradle of humanity, but one cannot stay in the cradle forever. So, in a lot of science fiction, it's viewed as humanity growing up and taking its place out among the stars. So, as the first spaceships are being developed in the late 19th century between the Soviet Union and the US, one day vast alien spaceships just show up in the skies over the Earth's principal cities. The space race ceases. Eventually, the aliens will ban all travel to other planets and all space development. After 1 week, the aliens announce that they are assuming supervision of international affairs to prevent humanity's extinction. They destroy the apartheid regime in South Africa. Actually, wait a minute. No, actually, what was interesting, what happened in South Africa was apartheid had been reestablished under a black majority, and they were committing genocide. So they stopped the genocide against the white minority in South Africa, and they also banned bullfighting. So the UN Secretary General Stormgren is the only one who's allowed to speak to Overlord Karelin, who is the supervisor, or basically the colonial governor of Earth. So basically the Overlords, Earth under the Overlords enters a golden age. They provide humanity with all kinds of technology. Culture gradually ceases. Humans are provided with their every wish, their every dream. War fades into the past. Any attempt to resist the overlords is stopped. The overlords are kind of benevolent father figures, but anytime anyone acts against them, they find a way to undermine them, either by like smearing them, by using mind control, by isolating them. So while it looks like they're kind of benevolently ruling Earth, they're really ruling through all sorts of nefarious means. And there are organizations who are anti-overlord and maintain some religion or culture or nationhood and wish for humanity to be free. But it turns out that the overlords basically founded these groups so that they could channel hatred against them and basically gradually get rid of it. So war begins to fade away. During the Golden Age, it seems that somehow the warlords succeed, the overlords succeed in wiping out all forms of religion. And I say wipe out because they'll say, oh, they reasoned with them and humanity just gave it up. Oh, it's they've grown up and they don't need fairy tales anymore. They always say that in science fiction, but do you know how many times people have said that throughout human history? I mean, they're like, well, we discovered that the Earth revolves around the sun. No one will still believe in Christianity. Oh, we went into the space. No one's still going to believe in it. Oh, we discovered the theory of evolution. Nobody's going to believe in it. And this has just been going on forever and ever. And I don't really see why the discovery of an alien race would change anything. The Bible's largely silent on... I don't think it states that there are not other worlds. It says that Earth is specially created. It states that Christ is the only incarnation of God. I don't think it really states that there can't be other species and there can't be other sentience. The Vatican has studied this at some length, and they came to the conclusion that other sentient beings that have rational souls, as Thomas Aquinas would say, could be baptized and we could evangelize them. This is not a new concept. I mean, there's also people who argue that the UFOs we're seeing are not actually UFOs but are demons, ironically enough, given the topic. But that's not neither here nor there. But my point is, I find it weird that even societies like Islam, like Islamic societies, which are fanatical and have maintained basically a 5th or 6th century culture, despite hundreds and hundreds of years, they've just lost that Islam has disappeared in a 50-year period, because that's how long the overlords take to destroy all religion on Earth. That all Africans have given up their superstitions during that time period. So the overlords rule for 50 years. Culture comes to a halt. People have largely given up on everything except for pleasure. And this is a common theme I find in most of these science fiction things. A lot of these 1950s, 1960s, 1970s science fiction writers really hate marriage. They view marriage, monogamy, and the nuclear family as being like some evil thing. And I mean, it wasn't just SJWs in the 2000s that came up with a hatred for the nuclear family. This has been around for a long time. So in like their future, the overlords get rid of marriage, and instead they sign contracts where they're legal spouses or legal significant others for a period of time. But at the same time, they always maintain a whole bunch of people on the side because they bring in like perfect birth control and perfect paternity tests. And so we have a future where everybody fucks everybody. Arthur C. Clarke takes the perspective that the only reason for monogamy and marriage was to ensure biological succession and the father of the progeny. It has nothing to do with psychology, nothing to do with culture, nothing to do with environment for raising children. People largely stop having children because they just spend all day basically having sex, doing drugs, all that kind of stuff. So eventually, after 50 years, they succeeded in basically wiping out all religion, all cultural advancement, and all distinctions between nations. And the Overlords show up. And there's a picture of them in this video, and they basically are demons. They're reptilian, they have wings, they have horns, cloven hooves, claws. And more and more overlords begin to arrive, and they go up throughout Earth and begin to take samples of various things. They're very interested, interestingly enough, in psychic research, which they see as bullshit, but they're interested in it. So one of the men they're really interested in. What was I thinking? I know there's a whole bunch of just random shit that goes on in this book. There is a scene with like an Ouija board, and they use it to figure out where the aliens' homeworld is. But anyways, this is just kind of let's move on. So there's a character named Jan Rodrix who really wants to see the Overlord's homeworld. And he figures out that they use relativistic ships. So it takes about 40 years to get to their homeworld at the speed of light. But if you're on the ship, it only seems like a couple of weeks. So there's a diorama they build for the Overlords to take back to Earth, which take back to their homeworld, which has a whale and a squid locked in combat. So Jan manages to build like a little, I guess, room in the whale, like a pressurized room, and he stows aboard and goes to the Overlord's homeworld. He has food and supplies in there, but he also injects himself with a long-term hibernation drug that makes him sleep for a couple weeks. So he winds up getting to the Overlord's homeworld, and it's not particularly interesting. It just looks very different. The gravity's very low there. Because, and that's partially why they have wings, because it's designed for a race of flying people. It's just very odd. There aren't doors in normal places and that sort of thing. And it's there where the Overlords explain their whole thing. They serve a cosmic consciousness. Let me see, what was it called again? The Overmind. You might say like the Zerg Overmind? Yeah, pretty much. So there's some cosmic consciousness, and this was kind of the idea that a lot of these people had during this period. I remember in the Foundation series, this was also something Isaac Asimov talked a lot about. This idea of this great cosmic intelligence. It's kind of like we're made up of trillions of cells, and they're all kind of little life forms. So they figured, why not have trillions of beings make up a super life form? So basically what the Overmind does is it controls the Overlords, and it sends them to various planets to prepare the species there for absorption into the Overmind. The more species it absorbs, the stronger it becomes. And that was their goal, was to go to Earth to get them to prepare the way for the humanity to join the Overmind. And the research into psychic phenomenon is a sign that a race is getting ready to be able to join the Overmind. So meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity continues to just go into complete... people barely leave their homes anymore. People just get fat. They just have sex all day. And a group of people is tired of human innovation being suppressed. They're tired of the Overlords have a ban on them traveling to other planets. The excuse they give is that humans aren't capable of psychologically dealing with the size of the universe, which is revealed to be a complete lie. But people are really upset with the stagnant culture, so a group established a colony called New Athens, devoted to the creative arts. So there, everybody starts developing new music. They bring back a lot of old music, new art. They start trying to restart human technology and cultural growth. The island is almost struck by a tsunami, but the Overlords intervene and save 2 children. from being destroyed. So the next generation of children, 60 years after the Overlords have arrived, begin to display psychic powers. So Corellin talks about the Overlord's purpose, and he tells them that his whole purpose, his whole goal was to come there and prepare their way for them to join the Overmind. And he tells them that because of their influence, this is the last generation of humans. There will be no humans after this one, and all children born in the last 15 years will join the Overmind, and they have superpowers. And that the parents are now just shells. And he remarks kind of coldly that if he had the balls to, what he should do is just exterminate all the adult humans, because they're going to be killed anyways, and there's no longer any future for them. So, as humans have their children stolen away and they go to a unspecified continent to await assumption into the Overmind, many of the parents begin to kill themselves. New Athens, as a kind of a final fuck you to the Overlords, detonates their island with an atomic bomb. So humanity is going extinct, and the Overlords cannot, I think I said they cannot ascend themselves, but they're slaves to the Overmind. And I'm, I guess, viewing this a lot more negatively than Arthur C. Clarke is. And that's kind of one of the weird things, is there's basically this Luciferian, like, demonic-looking species that shows up, and their presence leads to the extinction of humanity. Actually, it's revealed later that because people believe, given how similar they are to demons, that they must have tinkered with humanity at some point in the past. But it turns out what it was the collective consciousness of humanity had a vision of them being associated with their extinction. And that's why it was so prevalent in their minds. Arthur C. Clarke, though, seems to think that this is like all a good thing, the end of the human race, because they get to join the Overmind. The Overmind seems like something really evil to me, because it devours planets. So part of what the Overlords were doing was they had come to stop humanity from going to the stars, to stop humanity from becoming greater, and to force them to join the Overmind before they could come greater. Because the Overlords came when they were scared that humans were starting to develop these powers, but but they would have remained individuals, etc. And this is something I like to call the infinity will, which is a human, but more specifically Western thing, where we as Westerners, and we as humans, I guess, kind of more generally, have a will towards the infinite. We can never be satisfied. We can never fully get what we want. But because of our drive towards infinity, we have limitless potential. Through our free will, through our struggle to get what we want, and our struggle to become better, we possess something that, generally speaking, in fiction, other species are completely lacking. The ability to grow and change. Limitless potential. I remember in one episode of Star Trek, Q basically offers to make humanity into a race of Qs, but they say no because Qs, while they're godlike, are an evolutionary dead end, and they believe that by allowing humanity to continue to grow, humanity will one day surpass the Qs. And so I think that's my view of it, that the Overmind basically sends the Overlords to kill humanity off, to prevent them from ever challenging its rule over the galaxy. So the Overlords return him to Earth, and he finds that all of humanity is extinct and he's the last human alive. So there's hundreds of millions of children who are sitting on the quarantined continent, and they have become a single intelligence and no longer have individual personalities. They spend years and years just staring at empty space, not requiring food anymore. So the the Overlords have to leave because the planet's about to ascend. But before they go, they ask if they want to take Jan with them. But he says no, that he'd rather die on Earth and see the end of the civilization. He agrees to help the Overlords and transmits a report of what he sees. He believes that the Overlords had planned this from the beginning, and that was the reason he let them stow away. So the Overlords are very interested in any information they can get about the Overmind, because one day they still wish to join it or to break free is kind of my interpretation of it. So as they disappear, Jan experiences a profound emptiness as the Overlords are gone. So as he waits there, material objects begin to dissolve into transparency. Jan reports no fear but a sense of fulfillment. You know what's very similar to in End Evangelion when Chairman Keel goes, the ending and the beginning are one and the same. Yes, all is right with the world, and then he dissolves into LCL. It's kind of like that. So Earth vanishes in a flash of light, having ascended, and Corellin looks back at the receding solar system and says a final goodbye to the humanity that he destroyed. So a lot of people will say, oh, this is so great. They were able to join the cosmic intelligence. They were able to, they view this as a good thing. For my part, I see it as just very disturbing. I see this as very shocking. To me, if anything, this kind of makes me think of something that Satan would do, that him and his minions would show up and pretend to be aliens and be like, oh, we're an advanced civilization. And a lot of people have theorized that encounters with UFOs are actually encounters with demons or supernatural entities. And because something in general, I find they often, I have heard people say if you are being abducted and you yell Christ's name, the abduction will end. I've also heard one of the things the aliens hurt the most is Christianity. And the aliens certainly act a lot in terms of what they say, like, oh, don't judge, all things are permitted, you need a world government, you need to leave all of humanity behind, nations and cultures don't exist. It's very similar to how the Bible describes Satan and his minions. And it's just kind of ironic that this book is basically that. It's you have a demonic race come, destroy humanity, but do it under the auspices of good, and do it in kind of a seemingly morally ambiguous way. So I did really enjoy the book. It was well written. It was interesting. In contrast to a lot of books kind of from this time period, it at least had a bit more going on. There was kind of some morality play. There was some kind of profound thoughts about humanity and its destiny. Unlike a lot of stuff, it was like Rendezvous with Rama or something. This was a lot more of an interesting book. And I'd actually recommend reading it. So, this is Argent, and I'll talk to you guys later.